which job is a lot less fun than most people expect. Dog groomer. It's like working with children but with the added danger of one of them ripping your face off if you're not careful. Very stressful. Edit. Honestly, any job working with animals. It is always seen as such a great job, but it usually involves a need for a good amount of physical strength and strong stomach when cleaning up bodily fluids. And a hell of a lot of patience. Can't get spooked or scared of them. Airport baggage handler. Yay, it's fun being able to see parts of an airport people wouldn't normally get to see and drive around the airfield in spare time to have a look at some planes, especially fancy private jets. But my god, is it hard. Long hours, no social life because when you have days off you spend them catching lost sleep. Absolutely horrendous pay for hazardous work. In our training video they showed us the aftermath of someone who had been hit by an ATR 500 propeller and literally just smiled and said, "Don't do this." Also, what some people don't realize is that those bags don't magically appear on the plane. Some are loaded individually by hand. This is called loose load, and not into bins, which is a lot easier. You could be stacking over 200 bags in a space so cramped you can't even be on your knees if you are tall. Some of the bags, cargo, can weight over 30 kilograms, so it is physically backbreaking work, and on some days you may not even get a break on a 12-hour shift, and yes, that happens a lot. But the absolute worst part is the bodies. When someone is being sent home to be buried, we are the ones who put that coffin into the hold and tie your loved one down, and it's not easy for us. My most recent coffin was that of a 2-year-old baby, and my god, I was in tears tying that coffin down in the hold. So next time you're packing for that vacation, remember we are down there. Worked at Dr. John's, an adult shop, from midnight to 8 a.m. We had a lot of fun customers but a lot of total creeps, plus the management were all crazy. Edit. A few quick stories. I was 18, female, 5 feet 0 inches with red hair. Had a creepy guy stare at me from behind the racks for a while, so I got uncomfortable and went to the back room. The security guard radios me when the guy wants to check out. He bought all barely legal and redhead fetish videos. About 45 minutes later the phone rings and I answer. No one replied, so I asked if anyone was there. "Can you hear me?" That sort of thing. Hang up. Phone rings again. Same thing. That's when I learned that customers would call just to hear your voice. I had a 19, female, come in and say that she was a preacher's daughter, and I ended up walking her through the store explaining things. She was a lot of fun and spent most of the time blushing. An older man bought a blow-up sheep with noisemaker, and a gallon of lube with pump as a gag gift for a friend. I don't know that many people who would spend over $200 on a gag gift. Working the night shift, we got a ton of drunk people who were usually harmless. We were also about 10 miles from a nasty strip club, so we got a lot of their employees looking for outfits or shoes. Sometimes they would come in with random men and the men would spend a lot of money on them. The assistant manager got caught changing the prices on items she wanted to buy and then taking her 50% employee discount on top of it. She spent like $300 or something in one day and walked out with what should have been $1,000 in merchandise. The security guard on duty that day got fired. They pressed charges on the assistant manager for theft. A month later the manager got charged with tampering with a witness because she tried to get the security guard to say stuff that wasn't true. The owner said the employees were supposed to refuse service to anyone who was gay or transgender. We never did. Owner would get drunk and log into our online camera system and mess with cameras so security guards couldn't watch the sales floor. Cybersecurity. Bro, the movies do us no justice. Hacking is not as fast nor is it as easy as the media makes it. It's a great field, but you spend a lot of time researching or watching paint dry, especially in the government side. Acting. All the ones we see on TV and movies are the 0.0001% of incredibly lucky and talented people who manage to thrive in a hostile and overcrowded industry. And even when you are working, the actual job itself is 99% sitting on apple crate in hot makeup waiting for some grips to move a lighting fixture. Then you say 3 lines over and over again for an hour, and then you rap. A pediatric nurse, being a nurse for children and adolescents. Everyone in nursing school talks about how much they want to work with kids. The reality is that a pediatric nurse sees more cases of abuse and neglect than any other specialty. Doesn't matter where you are in a pediatric hospital, it's the thing you see most. I've seen so many DCS, Department of Child Services, caseworkers that I've gotten to know some of them and became acquaintances with them. Sure, working with children and adolescents is great, but people don't think about the most essential piece of that puzzle, which is their families. It doesn't matter how good of care you give to those kids, if you don't loop the parents into that care you may as well just not be doing anything for them. Lifeguarding. Everyone expects Baywatch, act, saving lives all the time. But it's usually just sitting there blowing your whistle telling little crap to stop F around. I write adult fan fiction as a side hustle. After a certain point it's just like writing a paper, except you have to keep thinking of different synonyms for a penis. Although not necessarily bad, beekeeping. Get used to the constant sound of buzzing during hive inspections or swarm removals, plus wearing the protective suit in hot-ass weather for hours on end, give or take the situation. Also, there appears to be a large number of beekeepers allergic to bees, so EpiPens are a must. Why on earth would someone who's allergic to bee stings go into beekeeping? That seems a not very intelligent decision. Bar bouncer. Hours of tension and boredom interrupted by moments of adrenaline-fueled fear for your life. Then some a hole pukes cheap booze on your shoes. Park ranger. Don't get me wrong, I loved it, but a lot of days it was less talk about cool animals while wearing your ranger hat and more the toilets are overflowing again. Go clean the septic tank filter and stir the tank with a shovel. With a little bit of hey, there's a methed out guy down by the bridge, can you convince him to leave without killing anyone? All for the low price of $26,000 per year with a college degree. Game master at an escape room. It's the same repetitive script, resetting the same stuff, giving clues and hints about the same things. The patrons are often competitive families who argue, obnoxious impatient 13-year-olds, college students who have been drinking, idiots who break crap and touch crap that I specifically told them not to. They never remember your initial instructions. If something gets broken during one group, you have to hurry and fix it before the next group. Librarian. It's not all books and being quiet. There are also spreadsheets. I'm a librarian too. I wouldn't say it's not fun, but it's definitely not what people think it is. If we sat around reading books all day, no books would be checked in or checked out, no books would be shelved, no information would be answered, no computer help, no programming would take place, etc. I love my job and am inspired by it, but it's a lot more work than people think. Working in a music store, musical instruments. Your days are spent listening to 50 different people play 50 different riffs poorly simultaneously, as if they're all putting on their own concert. Being a paramedic, if you work somewhere like Chicago, New York City or Los Angeles, yeah, you get stabbings and shootings, other varieties of murder on the regular. Most places the bulk of call volume is patients that don't feel well. The adrenaline-filled blood guts and glory calls are far less likely than the media would imply. Being a chef. All the flair and awesomeness they show on Vice and Netflix is far from what actually happens in the industry. It's not all fancy plates and tattooed or cool-haired guys doing their thing. It's a drug-infested, law-breaking work environment that only benefits the owners of a restaurant. Hiking and backpacking guide. Worrying for others the whole time takes the fun away. I went on a glacier hike when I was in Iceland and the guide seemed genuinely shocked and thrilled that my girlfriend and I were the only two people on his tour that day, and we had actually spent more than 5 minutes outdoors and were appropriately dressed. He said usually he had fairly large groups of tourists who typically had practically no outdoor experience and even less experience with cold weather. He said people often showed up in flip-flops even though the instructions clearly said to wear sturdy hiking shoes. He also said the groups typically move extremely slowly and he never gets to take people up onto the part with the best views and cleanest looking ice. He actually seemed really relieved we wanted to go further up and were making great time, like it was a treat for him. He was very knowledgeable and seemed so excited to talk about the stuff he knew, and I got the impression he usually spent more time babysitting than actually sharing that knowledge. Video game testing is like prostitution. It's doing something you love in the least fun way possible. Sure, some days it can be great and just like the real thing, but most days it's a huge pain in the ass. Video game developer, non-indie. They're notoriously overworked, especially during crunch time. The field is highly competitive too, so I imagine if you have the slightest issue with work being your entire life, it wouldn't be hard to replace you. Voice acting is also pretty brutal. Voice actors generally don't get paid very well and they're straining their throats or whatever. Accountant. Everyone thinks it's all fun and number crunching. But the constant stream of women throwing their panties and wanting to bear your children is honestly exhausting. Google Street View driver. You're all alone for 8+ hours a day, can almost never take a break, Need to constantly be on and focused, lest you crash the $25,000 Subaru with $60,000 plus worth of camera equipment on it. You end up becoming an amateur meteorologist to keep track of weather patterns and cloud cover, and in my experience there are a lot of people who just get insanely upset at you, at Google, and the job in general for a wide variety of reasons. I enjoyed myself when I did it, but it was nowhere near as glamorous or fun as I or my friends and family assumed. Edit. Thanks to everyone who expressed an interest in my summer job from almost 10 years ago. I'll just answer the most asked questions here real quick. Pay? $15 an hour, but contingent on hours driven, which were themselves dependent on clear weather to ensure optimal image quality. Why not drive every day no matter the weather? Google got around this problem by making you redrive routes whose pictures turned out subpar. To prevent people double billing by driving the same easy route constantly, you also had a weekly quota of unique miles driven, so no double dipping. What could you do in the car? As long as the camera and the napping software was running properly, I was on my own. I listened to music, the news, and lots of books on tape. I could stop for short bathroom breaks whenever I felt like it, and had an hour guaranteed for lunch whenever I wanted to take it, which usually amounted to eating in the car on the side of some lonely rural road 90% of the time. Who would ever think this was fun or glamorous? All I can say is, back in 2012 most people I talked to were pretty excited, myself included, about getting the chance to do any work with Google, let alone this cool new project that would let you see what any place on Earth looked like at street level from the comfort of home. This was the era of Google Plus being a potentially exciting new thing, of Google Glass being the future of tech, and overall it was a different time. That's why everyone I knew thought this was a cool gig. Archaeologist. Did it during my 20s and that was more than enough. Long, hot days. Living out of cheap motels on crap pay, and you typically find nothing more than some pieces of glass and broken pottery. Every once in a blue moon you find something cool, but those items generally end up getting stored away in a box full of other artifacts never to be seen again. Video game tester. You aren't spending your time playing completed fully realized games. You are playing the same level of a game over and over, seeing if there are bugs. Working in an animal shelter. For sure, it's probably less intense than zookeeping. But the amount of people who apply or volunteer expecting to come in and play with cute puppies all day is absurd. We're basically animal maids. You deal with animals of all sorts of behavioral and developmental stages, crap and pissing every F-where, and then you look over and this F-dog named Chumbawamba swimming in his water bowl. So you gotta fill that up 6 times and dry his kennel out. And then you go and mop up the cat room around 10 kittens who want to eat your mop, and also 4 children who are all yelling that there's puke in the floor and I must clean it now. Not to mention all the extra behind the scenes work that the public never sees. How in the summer, during kitten and puppy season, the shelter built to house 500 max has 750, and I didn't take a lunch or sit at all for any of my shifts for the past 6 days. How the courts force us to put down animals that we know can be rehabilitated, but we don't get enough funding to fight it. How animal control just showed up with the 4th pregnant stray of the week, but intake is full and even double stacked in some cases. So your co-worker fosters the cats on her own. Not even to mention the crappy people who do dumb crap and end up getting bit or scratched, and the animal is the one who bears those consequences. I am the proudest shelter worker in the world. I adore my job, even at its hardest. I didn't sit for 9.5 hours today and I found a cat turd in the cuff of my jeans, but it doesn't matter because a bonded pair of adult cats got adopted today. I took 6 applications this morning and the cat in bank 4 with the goopy eye is already looking better. And we sent a mama out to foster. The hard work is always worth it for these babies. Baker. Coming into work at 3 or 4 a.m. so you can have a 6 a.m. baked goods is miserable. Demolition. Everyone wants to break crap with a sledgehammer. Everyone is tired of lifting that sledgehammer by 5 swings. Nobody wants to load the broken stuff into bags or a wheelbarrow and take it to the dumpster. Accounting isn't the adrenaline rush that most people think it is. Zookeeper. Don't get me wrong, it's awesome to be around so many amazing animals and care for them. But the smells are ridiculously, insanely foul. I have a really strong stomach and it's still tough for me. We've had some interns quit over it. I was warned about the smells when getting into the field, but thought, oh, I've volunteered at animal shelters. I know what animal stink smells like. Nope. Not even close. Working at a Charles Dickens fair is interesting, but not incredibly fun. It is hard to stay in character, and people get so mad when they see the Alice in Wonderland area. Yeah, we know it's not Charles Dickens, but we can have a kids' play area in the world of Oliver Twist, okay? Lawyer: no, it isn't like they show on TV. Hey, finally cases before the judge. Crap, the other party didn't show up. Next date the judge has given is 3 months away. Being an extra in a movie. Now, it can be super fun. I especially love historical and post-apocalyptic or sci-fi or fantasy type stuff. But a typical day on set wasn't what I thought it'd be when I started doing it. Often we have to get up at 3 or 4 in the morning to get to holding. And if you're a minute late to check in, sometimes they'll kick you out. Then we sit around in holding with sometimes hundreds of other extras. And we're usually sitting there for a good 3 or 4 hours before they start telling us to get ready to film. During this time we go through long wardrobe, hair and makeup lines where they reuse clothes, unless you bring them yourself, brushes and makeup without washing them. When we finally get to film, it's often the same mundane motions over and over. Exceptions of course, and those are always fun. Then we either get shuffled around or go back to holding. Several more hours pass, we go film again. Hungry? You get lunch 6 hours after your call time. And a usually meager supply of snacks. In between takes it's more standing around. Often in heat or rain, or we all get shuffled into cramped spaces to wait. Days on set are often more than 12 hours. And I know someone who had to be on set for 26 hours straight. They can legally hold you there until they declared filming is done. So don't make plans for the next day. Not to mention that you rarely see yourself in the final cut. I'm not trying to bash other background actors or the film industry, because I've met lots of awesome people and gotten to do some pretty cool things. For example, interacting with main actors in scenes, running around in the woods with fake guns, or being a zombie. But when I did my first job as a teen, I definitely thought it would be a lot different. ETA, like others mentioned, I'm not part of the SAG union. And extras who are do indeed get treated better / more perks. Also, it may be different in Hollywood. I've only worked in Georgia. I've also been a stand-in. And I like that a lot better, because you're treated as the crew rather than, well, as extra. Being a writer. I always thought it was my absolute dream job. But the only job I could get after college was working in a content mill as a blog writer. I used to work 70-hour weeks staring at the computer in a basement of an old bank, writing bullshit articles about the dangers of mold, fence cleaning, and why you need a commercial awning, and the dream turned into a nightmare. While I still write occasionally, I am now working as a communications person, so it is a bit less heavy. I always say the more fun it is to go somewhere, the worse it is to work there, like amusement parks and arcades. Honestly, every job that lots and lots of people really want to do sucks. Mostly due to supply and demand. You're gonna be treated like shit. And if you complain, you're gonna be fired, because you're inherently replaceable. Because there's thousands of people that would love to do your job for even less money than you are making. Paleontologist. You don't get to work with full dinosaur skeletons and do all kinds of awesome expeditions. You're mostly sitting at a desk looking at some pictures and logging stuff on your computer. Maybe examining a fossil occasionally. If you're lucky, you can go on a real gig. And OMG, spend hours in the hot sun dusting off rocks. Flight attendant. 1. You are on call, on reserve. Forever, have a terrible schedule. Have no life, and make no money for 5 to 10 years. 2. While you work for peanuts, you can't afford to use your flight benefits in any substantial way. 3. Then, when you finally get a chance to use your benefits for a trip, you have to fly standby, which means you aren't guaranteed to get on the flight you want. 4. Then, if you do make it out of town, you better have like a week off so you can make damn sure you're back in your base city in time for your next work shift. 5. Did I mention there is an active US legislation, Railway Labor Act, that allows airlines to exploit so you don't get paid for certain work hours that you actually need to be working? For example, FAs don't get paid for boarding, or any time the plane is at the gate. Worst job ever. Being a character performer at Disney. Don't get me wrong, there are some amazing perks and truly magical moments. I know I'm super lucky and tons of people would love to be in my shoes. But the day-to-day work is exhausting in ways I never thought possible. Guests are ridiculously abusive. I've had things said and done to me I never would have imagined. The company isn't always great. It highly depends on your leadership. And there's so much focus on your body and face, good and bad, that it can be incredibly depressing and difficult emotionally. Plus, you have to accept that there's very little upward mobility. Most people grow out of it, and it's rough to know that one day you'll get too old or too fat and you will have to start all over in a new career field. So you constantly are thinking either, 1. What you're going to do when you leave. 2. How you're going to keep yourself there. I personally knew it would be temporary. And I now only work there seasonally while I have a normal career. But Disney has a way of sucking you in. Video game testing. I've been working in the game industry for 6 years now, and teaching for 2. Testing video games is thought to be just, oh, you just play games all day? LOL, but it's actually very specific and arduous. First of all, there are a bunch of testing methodologies such as load or soak testing, white room testing, version testing, to name a few. But the most common one is functionality testing. Functionality testing is so if I walk into that corner with the shotgun in my inventory, I can clip through the wall. But if I have my M16 in my inventory, I don't clip through. After reading through this thread for 20 minutes, I've concluded that every job sucks.
This is RedditJoe channel, and don't forget to hit subscribe down below for more upcoming videos.